Morning, everybody. Sunday morning. Tony Jigsaw Cutillo here. Fantasy Firebox back once again. Covering the weekends here. Win Daily Sports, as always. I hope everybody had a wonderful night. I went to the Philadelphia Phillies game. It was very interesting, to say the least. Should have won the game. They blew a lead. For all you baseball fans out there, definitely not the way you want to end a game against the Marlins. But it is what it is. And then I'll tell you what. One thing I'll say is, let's first start off a little preview today for the show. Break down a really little bit of yesterday, because we had a really good day for our DFS cores and our sleepers and our lineup. So I want to break that down just a little bit. It's Sunday. It's football day to me. I don't really break down a lot of baseball on the show on Sundays, just because Sundays are a crapshoot, right? The 8 games are going to be played. You just never know, who's going to play, who's going to sit. The content becomes irrelevant later on. We could go through lives through Discord or Twitter. So that being said, check out at Win Daily Sports, all social formats. There's a tremendous amount of people there to help you out when it comes to your daily fantasy lineups. As always, check us out in the Discord chat as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, right? We have so many different avenues and outlets for you guys to get involved and collaborate. It's really a great community. You're missing out if you're not involved. So, number 2, what I will say is I like to use Sunday as football days. No pun intended. I know usually football days are Sunday, right? Unless you're a college guy. But I like to break down a team every single week. So last week it was the Baltimore Ravens. This week it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals. We're also going to look at a few mock drafts. And I want to ask the question, Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray? You're upcoming, what guy are you targeting? Obviously, you're never going to get both, right? So it's a good question, because they're both going to be top 5 guys. What guy are you targeting in your drafts and why? Okay, we're going to break down a little saga about the receivers on the Arizona Cardinals. Look at the 2 top receivers on the Seattle Seahawks. And then I want to ask about information overload. I want to get your guys' opinions on mock drafts. And I love mock drafts. Great insight, great information, but can they negatively affect your draft strategies? And I want to say that because they can. If you don't use them the right way, they could negatively affect what you do in your drafts. Now, one thing I want to say, I always like to start with a little conversation. And I'll tell you what, last night, I was scared to death. Okay? I'm going to be honest with you. Was at the Philadelphia Phillies game. Was there with my father, with my son, watching the game, and it went into extra innings. And right before the extra innings, got the alert on the phone. Severe storm coming right in the area. I was like, you know what, guys, let's roll. Let's get out of here just in case. So we just made it to the car, and then everything unleashed. Mother Nature unleashed a wicked storm, okay? Her unparalleled powers that cannot be undefeated. And I'll tell you what, if you've never driven in rain where you can't see, it is something that you never want to do. Okay. So I've never been in that situation. And it was horrendous in the sense that my windshield wipers couldn't even pass up. There was so much rain, so much water, puddling all over the place. It took me forever to get home, but it was just an unbelievable experience. So I don't know if anybody does that for a living. Like if you're the reason why I would say this is if you're a truck driver, if you're a CDL driver and you drive for a living, I know you go through that kind of stuff on a normal daily basis. Hats off to you, man, because that was an unbelievable experience. I will never ever forget. Really, it was. I couldn't see anything, and I've never seen anything like that before in my life, ever. So, and shout out to everybody who was able to safely get home, and hopefully nobody had flood damage or anything like that, because it was definitely, I've never seen rain come down that long, that steady and that hard. So, but again, shout out to all the truck drivers out there, because without you, we would not have the products that we have. So let's start off real fast. We had a really good day yesterday here on the Fantasy Firebox. And again, if you're not following the Fantasy Firebox, you need to. You need to start, because we give out winners here. And again, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not the lineup guy. I've never been the lineup guy, right? I'm not. I like to have fun. I like to pick and pluck. I like to pick and pluck, like I say, okay? I like to grab a bunch of names and try to formulate different lines with different guys here or there. I'm not saying they're all going to hit, right? But I like to take out those value plays and look for those really good matchups, just like all you guys do as well, right? So that's one of the most important things that I like to do. So yesterday, we had a really good day, okay? Obviously, I think it was no secret that everybody was on the Dodgers as a stack potential team. But one team I told you guys was the Milwaukee Brewers. And I said, listen, I know nobody's really talking about them, but Milwaukee's going up against Luis Castillo, who could give out a ton of hits, right? He could give up a ton of runs. He could be hit up against. And Milwaukee, they had a really good day yesterday. They had a really good day from a fantasy standpoint, from a DFS standpoint. Okay? That's really important. Okay, if you break down what the Milwaukee Brewers did, it's because, again, when you look at pitchers, okay, it's not all about how many runs they give up. Okay, it never is. It's about how many hits they give up, because that's what you eventually want. Okay, and the Milwaukee Brewers team, Yelich at 21, Adams I just call him Adams, Dames, whatever you want to call him, right? 21, Garcia 10, Luis Urias 10. And we had Urias and Garcia on our sleeper list, right? Our value list. So these are consistently guys, that you're going to be able to target in your upcoming weeks. I call them values and risers. But we had a really good day yesterday. Let's break it down. So yesterday, our core we threw up there was Muncy, Betts, Merrifield, and Anderson. If it wasn't for Merrifield, we would have had a trifecta, okay? We would have had a trifecta. We would have did really well, okay? Muncy with a 40, Tim Anderson 26, Mookie Betts 13, Whit Merrifield only a 2, okay? But if you would have took that as your core, I'm telling you right now, you're winning yesterday. You're cashing out. I know I did. I cashed out on 3 different lineups that I had this as my core. Because even though Whit Merrifield only gave me a slight bump at a 2, I was able to get the value guys. And who were the value guys? Riley, Urias, Garcia, and Peterson. Okay, Riley didn't do much. Only gave you a 2. That's okay. Jock Peterson, 19. I tell you, swinging a hot bat for the Atlanta Braves. I know he's a veteran, but without Acuna, they're going to be looking for guys to be able to carry a lineup, and they're going to get pitches to hit. So until people prove that Peterson is not an ageless, or I should say an overage veteran that's not really going to produce, I'm not expecting him to take Ronald Acuna's spot, but I'm saying he's going to be in a lineup that there's going to be a lot of pitches to hit now because people aren't pitching around certain guys, right? So Peterson, again, top of that lineup, produces, okay? You get Garcia and Urias, both with a 10. That's 20 points. These are all guys under $3,000 or under $4,000. So they give you that bump, right? They give you that bump. Now, Ryan Mountcastle, okay, he was my big sleeper. I thought he would be able to go long. Gives you a 9. Okay, still positive point production. Under $4,000 player, almost gives you double-digit points. I'll take that. The FFVP, Jackie Bradley Jr., 0, nothing. That's okay. 2,400, it doesn't hurt you. But 2 former guys that were FFVPs that we talked about, Gavin Sheets and Jake Berger, what did they do? 23 points respectively for the Chicago White Sox. So again, the FFVPs, if you keep a tally of them and you keep them as your risers for the new lineups coming in week after week, you could definitely hold some value right there. Our aces, Garrett Cole, Tyler Miguel. Listen, 13, listen, 13 for 8,000. I guess at least we were in a positive realm, but I expected more. Not a big deal because Garrett Cole picks it up with a 36, right? So these are how you have to formulate these picks, right? They're not always going to hit on all of them. You're never going to hit on all of them. Okay, and if you do, go to the casino, go bet on red, go bet on black, whatever you need to do, throw it all in because that means you're a one lucky SOB, right? So at the end of the day, we had some really, really good picks. Even Pedro Severino, again, sleeper catcher. 2,400, or I think it was actually 2,100, okay, for Severino, and he gives you a 7. There's your baseline of 7 to 10 for under $2,500. You can't beat that, right? You can't beat that. And shout out to Brandon Nemo. Okay, Brandon Nemo for the Mets. I told you Mets stack, right? Mets stack. Brandon Nemo was a guy I mentioned 2 weeks ago, a guy that you needed to be in on in the up and coming weeks. He's coming back from injury. He's getting back in the lineup, and you're seeing his value start to increase. He was at 4,100 yesterday. He's going to get, or it might have been 4,800. I forget, but he's getting up there. So be careful. He's getting up there. So you don't want to chase points, but these are the guys I keep telling you guys to look at. What's he do yesterday? Hits a nice cool 20, right? So again, lot of value we give on this show. Okay, and that's what I try to do. I try to give you those sneaky values. Now today, like I said, I don't really break down the baseball element, and today I strictly try to talk football because it is football day and mock drafts are coming up and things of that nature. So I will say today, obviously, just by doing a quick look at the DFS landscape, you're obviously going to attack a couple pitchers, right? Those pitchers that you're going to attack are going to be DHOP and Matt Harvey. Okay, I think that's simple to say. You know, if you're DHOP, you're looking at a Detroit lineup, okay, and obviously Matt Harvey looking at a Kansas City lineup. So you look at a guy like Sal Perez, you're looking at Hernandez, maybe a couple sleepers in Michael Taylor, Jorge Soler, depending on, even Hunter Dozier, depending on who starts, right? Detroit, I keep telling you guys, very sneaky offensive team. Okay, so I think today in Detroit going up against DHOP, you could definitely look at guys, okay, like even a guy like Zach Short. Okay, under 3,000. Miggy Cabrera batting cleanup again for only 2,700. I think this could be a Miguel Cabrera day. I love the Miguel Cabrera days. I do. Okay, you can get a lot of sneaky plays right now. Okay, on the Detroit Tigers. So keep that in the back of your mind, okay? Keep that in the back of your mind when you're doing your lineups today. DHOP can be hit from the left side. And again, I'm telling you, I'm calling it right now. Miggy Cabrera goes long today. Miguel Cabrera goes long today. Double-digit fantasy output for Miguel Cabrera at 2,700. I think that's a great, great play, okay? That's a great play. Keep an eye on that. I think you can really benefit, okay? Kansas City, Hunter, like I already told you about, it depends on how much you want to spend, right? I don't know. Do you want to spend 53 on Carlos Santana? I'm not sure. Salvador Perez, Perez, do you want to spend $5,000 to catch a position? Whit Merrifield had a bad day yesterday. Will he bounce back? But there's some sneaky talent below, right? Ryan O'Hearn, another former FFVP. Ryan O'Hearn, when we started him at 2,100, now he's at 3,200. Hunter Dozier, 3,300. He's been very consistent. Okay, very, very, very consistent. So there's a lot of guys that depending on what you want to do, even a guy like Nicky Lopez, as a shortstop at 3,500. So I think again, when you're going against Matt Harvey, everybody's fair game, right? Everybody's fair game. Now, what I want to do is let's talk about some football. All right, because we got to switch the gears here, okay? We got to switch the gears here. We got to talk about fantasy football, okay? And one of the biggest things I want to talk about today is the fantasy football decision of, is it Russell Wilson or is it Kyler Murray? Again, two of the same style of quarterbacks. Obviously, Russell Wilson's not going to run as much as a guy like Kyler Murray, but I think they're very similar in what they do. And I'm curious to see, because obviously you're not going to get both of these guys, right? I mean, let's face it, unless you're in like in a draft that nobody has absolutely no clue what they're doing, which that's not possible, because anybody can open up a USA Today or, ESPN, or go on Win Daily Sports and look at the projections by our man Sticks and say, oh, I know I could get one of these guys here, right? So, but I want to know who you would be targeting, in these drafts, between the two, because they're eerily similar. Last year, Russell Wilson, 27.1 points per game in fantasy. Kyler Murray, 28.2 points per game in fantasy. Now, Russell Wilson was playing on an MVP caliber level, just by the NFL standpoint in the beginning of the year, right? But if you break down what they both did, even in the first three games respectively on both of their counterparts, they actually averaged 34 fantasy points per game for the first three, both of them. Now, if you look at the rankings and you look at their overall stats, Russell Wilson, okay, his lowest game was 16. Kyler Murray did throw you in an 11 there. Now, Kyler Murray did get hurt in week 11 with his shoulder, came back, that wasn't running with the same ability, wasn't the same kind of quarterback. So we have to think about what that's going to mean going into this year. Right now, obviously, who has the better weapons? That's another thing, right? You break down what we're going to do. We're going to break down the Arizona Cardinals in a little bit and talk about, besides DeAndre Hopkins, do they have enough weapons? Now, we already know that Russell Wilson is getting my man DK Metcalf back, and is getting Tyler Lockett back, and they get a new weapon. They new weapon in Gerald Everett, okay, as a tight end, which I think is really good. Rich, what's up, Rich? Checking in, says Wilson's O-line was horrendous. Yep, Russell Wilson was getting killed, right? Russell Wilson was getting killed, Rich, on a consistent basis. Was getting killed. So yes, that's a concern, because Russell Wilson's getting up there. He's getting older, right? So is he going to be able to stand up to the pressure? There's so many things to look at Russell Wilson. I think there's a lot of question marks, okay? There's a lot of question marks. But again, he is in his mid-30s. I think he's 33, 32, 33. Will he finish as a top 5 quarterback this year? I think he probably will, because he just has so many weapons. Now, the interesting part was, what is he going to do from a fantasy standpoint? Because last year, I think it was already known. He went into the year last year saying that he wants to throw the ball more. Okay, he wants to throw the ball more. But I think, like Rich is alluding to, that offensive line was so horrendous, he kind of had to change back a little bit and revert back to his legs. Okay, 513 yards that he rushed for last year. The previous 2 seasons, he never broke 400. So he kind of reverted back to 2017, okay, where he had the 6.2 average, and he had rushed for 550 plus. He kind of reverted to that. Okay, but Kyler Murray is going to get you 1,000. Right? He's going to get you 8 to 1,000. Okay, he probably would have got 1,000 last year if he would have played all 16 games. So it all depends on what kind of element you're looking for. Russell Wilson threw 40 touchdowns last year. That's nothing to shake your head about. The highest completion percentage of his entire career last year at almost 69%. That's what you have to look at. Previously, the highest was 68 in 2015, but before that, he was 66, 65, 61, 63. So completion percentage is a big deal. Through 13 picks last year, most interceptions he's ever thrown in his career. Most interceptions he's ever thrown in his career. The previous 2 years, under double digits, single digits at 7 and 5. That's another thing you have to look at. Now, his yards per carry, when we talk about running ability, were higher last year, 6.2. Again, highest they've been since 2017. So there's certain things that we need to look at for Russell Wilson. Now, Mike checks in, says, Murray has a lot of weapons now. You know what, Mike? You're right, but are those weapons going to be productive? And that's what I need to ask, because there is no outlet in Larry Fitzgerald anymore, right? You're getting a guy in A.J. Green who we don't know, can he stay healthy? Right? I really like Christian Kirk a lot. Okay, so that's one player I like. But let's get right back into that. Mike brings up a good point, because we're going to flip around a little bit here. Let's look at the season outlook, because I like to take these outlooks. And right now, fantasy outlook, Arizona Cardinals. Let's break down this team and see, how many fantasy points fantasy players they have. Obviously, we already talked about Kyler Murray, right? But let's look at the running back position before we talk about the receiver position. Chase Edmunds or James Conner, right? We all went into last year. I know you guys remember. We were huge on Chase Edmunds. Huge. Chase Edmunds. He's going to be the guy. And then they get Kenyon Drake. They brought in Kenyon Drake halfway through 2 years ago, right? From Miami. They trade for him in New England. And then we say, you know what? Kenyon Drake is going to be the guy because he got the bulk of the carries down the stretch run. I think it was like the final 8 games or whatever. But Chase Edmunds before that was pretty electric, right? So we thought Chase Edmunds would come in and have this huge year. Not really, right? 2002, he finished with a career high rushing attempts of only 97, right? 448 yards. All right, but the thing was the passing game, which we know is Chase Edmunds' forte, right? With 67 targets, 53 receptions, 400 yards rushing, and 4 receiving touchdowns. Now, the one thing I could say is it seems as though if you bring in a guy like James Conner, who, listen, again, if he could stay healthy, right? That's a big point with James Conner. Can he stay healthy? And I think that's what we're always looking at. That was his problem in Pittsburgh, okay? But, when he was healthy, he was always up in that RB1 conversation, right? Whether it be injury last year, whether it be concussions, whether it be COVID-19 issues. Listen, he's missed 12 games over 3 seasons, okay? That's at least 4 games a year, right? Last year, I think it was a turf toe, I should say. And he had surgery to repair it this offseason. It was that bad. So a lot of interesting things about what's going to happen. He only signed a 1-year deal, right? So if he only signs a 1-year deal, that means he's looking to prove himself. Okay, he's looking to prove himself. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, you definitely know. And I don't look at touchdowns, right? Touchdowns for me are basically a luxury. You cannot predict how many touchdowns a guy's going to get, but I think you could definitely envision him being the goal line back. I think that he's definitely going to get the goal line looks. Now, this could be a full-blown out committee, right? Or this could be a week-to-week kind of thing. It's just going to be an interesting scenario because we just haven't seen a healthy James Conner in a year and a half. So we have to see how he's going to play out. And the other thing that we have to think about is you're going from James Conner is going from a statue, basically, in Ben Roethlisberger to a guy that likes to run all the time in Kyler Murray. How will that benefit James Conner? Because now you're going to have a spy on Kyler Murray, which is going to be that extra added layer of protection, okay, that's gone on the defensive side of the ball, that he's going to be able to get to that second level. And that's the biggest thing with James Conner. James Conner's a running back that needs to get to that second level with force and power, and then he can take off. So if that second level guy is going to be zoned in on Kyler Murray, that could do nothing but help a guy like James Conner. Now, does that mean James Conner is going to be a lockdown number 1? I don't think so. I don't. I'm not sure. Rich, you're right. Conner never stay healthy. It exists 4-game average, Rich. 4-game average over the past 3. Really tough, man. Really tough, especially when you're talking about fantasy football. And if you're talking 13 good weeks, okay, and 4 of them are gone, I mean, listen, that's a big deal. That's 9 games you get out of your RB1. I don't even know if I would touch James Conner, right? I don't even know. Running backs are muddled with the cards. You're right. I mean, I really like Chase Edmunds. I think Chase Edmunds could be that guy because he does everything. And I think sometimes you may get into a situation where maybe Kingsbury is going to overthink the situation, right? You never know. He may overthink the situation, but listen, if you're asking me right now, if somebody says to me, who you looking at from the running back standpoint, I think it's 100% going to be Chase Edmunds. I'm just saying I'm not going to go high on Chase Edmunds and say, he's going to be my RB1. Obviously, I think we all know that he's not that. But I'll tell you, if he can get around 220 touches, right? Think about this. If he can get 220 touches from a running back standpoint, I think you could have something there. And the reason why is, here's what you have to do. You have to break down each position, right? And you have to see touch-wise, what are they looking at touch-wise, okay? You look at a guy like Alvin Kamara, who only has 117 rushing attempts and then 76 receptions, right? So you're looking at how many touches those kind of guys are getting. They're dual touch running backs, right? If you just look at the rushing standpoint, Aaron Jones is a guy, only 215 touches last year, right? Only 215 attempts. right? So you have to look at that. So Aaron Jones with the targets probably around 260. So if I can get 220 out of Chase Edmunds, I think he could be a low end running back one. Only because that team's going to be that explosive on offense, right? So, but again, I don't know if he gets to 220, and there's the question mark. And that's why when we talk about these kind of topics, that's why I always say to myself, there may be somebody else I'd rather target instead than taking that question mark. Do I want to take that question mark in Chase Edmunds? Right? Do I want to take that question mark? Are there guys above Chase Edmunds that I much rather have? Right? And if you look at that list, you look below, like right now, Chase Edmunds, I can tell you right now, his ADP is around round 5. Okay. He's being ranked as number, anywhere between 19 and 23. Okay. Anywhere between 19 and 23 on a national level. Now, I look at guys that have been drafted after Chase Edmunds. I'd rather have Mike Davis. Honestly, I'd rather have Mike Davis. I'd rather have David Montgomery. I'd rather have Myles Gaskin. I'd rather have DeAndre Swift. Right, Myles Gaskin to me is an ultimate sleeper. I can't wait to start talking about him. But I'd rather have any one of those guys above Chase Edmunds because I just think he brings too many question marks. Now, we also look at the Arizona Cardinals, and the biggest thing is the running back. I mean, the wide receiver position, right? The biggest thing is the wide receiver position. So number one, you have DeAndre Hopkins, who obviously top receiver in the game. Is he the number one fantasy receiver? Right? I don't know. Okay? I don't know. So last year, he finished second in the league with 160 targets. Obviously, behind Stephon Diggs, right? But he converted them into 115 receptions, right? That he has hands of gold, DeAndre Hopkins. 1,407 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The touchdowns probably were a little low for him, but he's as consistent as they come. 115, 1407, right? And he does it every single year. He doesn't get hurt. He's consistently in the lineup, right? There are so many guys that you can't trust at the receiver position. But DeAndre Hopkins is 100% one of the most confident picks that you can make. He's an elite, right? He's absolutely elite. 100%. Now, I still say Calvin Ridley is my number one guy. And I know a lot of say, oh, well, he doesn't possess the same high floor upside combo like a guy like Hopkins does. But I still think that on a week-to-week basis, I like Calvin Ridley to be the number one guy. But I talked about that before. This is about the Arizona Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins will continue to get his, right? He will continue to get his. And I'll tell you what, if guys like, I love Christian Kirk. Okay? I love Christian Kirk. He is the slot guy. And again, I know he hasn't even got the 65, 70 receptions, hasn't hit set, but he's also had injuries, right? He's another guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy. Okay. But again, he's going to be taking over for the Larry Fitzgerald spot. He's going to be in the Larry Fitzgerald role. Okay. And I think that is a huge deal for Christian Kirk, especially, if you have a guy like AJ Green that can give you the 1 year and he can basically, listen, AJ Green, okay, is going to command attention. I don't care if AJ Green is hurt. I don't care if AJ Green is 38 years old, even though he's not. Okay. I'm just saying, no matter what, the name alone and the talent that he's already shown is going to command some kind of coverage from the opposing defenses because he could still go up and get the ball as long as Kyler Murray can get its own. And you see right now what they've been able to do from a fantasy standpoint when we talk about the connection between Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, right? That's the same kind of connection that you'll be able to get from a go up and get the ball with AJ Green. So I think that's one of the things that you definitely have to look at. Christian Kirk could be an all-around good receiver. Christian Kirk could be every bit of a guy. I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you who he reminds me of. He reminds me of Doug Baldwin. Okay. He reminds me of Tyler Lockett. And it's funny that we're comparing Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray because I look at some of the receivers that they've had, in Seattle, and the same kind of receivers that I could see now, in Arizona. But I think Christian Kirk is that nice compact receiver, that John Brown kind of receiver. He's not as quick as a John Brown, but he's strong, right? He's strong. And if Christian Kirk can get across that middle, and that's the whole thing about this Cliff Kingsbury offense. The Kingsbury offense is basically, look, it's all going to revolve around Kyler Murray. And like I said before, if he's got that maximum defensive protection on the other side, constantly zoning in on his legs and his running ability, that's going to leave that middle seam open all day for guys like Christian Kirk. And you have a guy in DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, two big receivers that could throw those blocks across the middle that could definitely open up Christian Kirk to some very, very good plays. So Christian Kirk, number one from a DFS standpoint, but maybe as a season-long wide receiver 2 could be a nice pick later in drafts, right? Later in drafts where other guys are going. Listen, I would definitely, you take a wide. Here's the thing with your wide receiver 2. What I will say is you take a wide receiver 2 that's on a really good offensive team. Okay, you don't take a wide receiver 2 with just upside because you think he's going to get catches. No, you want the opportunities, because wide receiver 2, you're always getting the opportunities based upon who the wide receiver 1 is, right? Who the coverage is, right? It's always the way, right? That's the way you always formulate your offenses, right? Look at Buffalo. Stephon Diggs commands so many attention. That's why guys like a Cole Beasley or a Gabriel Davis or a John Brown were able to get these abilities and opportunities, because the focus was always on that wide receiver 1. So always make sure your wide receiver 2 is coming from a different perspective, okay? From a different perspective, not just how many catches he's going to get, it's how many opportunities he's going to get. And I think that's going to be what we see from Christian Kirk. I'll tell you what, I'm really curious to see what AJ Green is able to do, because nobody's looking at AJ Green. He's a guy I think you definitely take a flyer on. You definitely take a flyer on, because you just never know. You just never know. Again, he was in a really bad situation in Cincinnati. Okay, you already seen that eventually, he was being phased out, whether by his own doing or, Zach Taylor not understanding how to run an offense. Then Joe Burrow gets hurt. There's so many things that happened out there that it just didn't fall in AJ Green's favor. So I still think AJ Green has some really good time left. Again, he's 32 years old, right? To expect him to go back and do what he did, right, in 2015 is being pretty irresponsible. Okay, but 2017 is not far removed from a 75 1,100-yard campaign. Okay, that's 2017. 2018, we already know. Okay, gets hurt. 2019 misses the whole season. 2020, he played 16 games. He did get 104 targets, but only 47 catches. Only 47 catches. That's like that's bad. That's bad. That literally, that's under a 40% ratio, that from target to reception ratio. So that's a tough pill to swallow. That's something, lowest average ever, 11.1. He's always in the 15s, and that's what I mean is yards per catch. So AJ Green, depending on the offense, I think, he's being listed as a wide receiver 3. Obviously, he's going to be a wide receiver 2 on that team. It's going to be him and Hopkins on the outside with Christian Kirk in the middle. And then you never know. Rondale Moore could come in and give you some kind of looks at the wide receiver position, depending on how they're going to use everybody, right? I mean, they've already – listen, here's the thing about Rondale Moore. They like drafting these young, explosive guys, right? They call him an athletic freak, right? They say he was a monster as a freshman, but he had so many injuries, right? But the knock on him is just his size, right? He's 5'7", 5'7", 180 pounds. They say he lacks the size to, really be successful, just like you hear about like Devonta Smith, and you heard that about Deshaun Jackson. So it's all be about scheme. So Rondale Moore, for me, is not going to be the guy that you target on your season-long drafts, because he's more of a scheme kind of player, okay, a second-round pick, so obviously they're going to want to get him, included. But listen, they've drafted guys in the past, but they haven't produced the way that I think Rondale Moore will sparingly, Okay, I would preface that by saying sparingly because he is going to be a gadget guy, right? He is going to be a gadget guy. Just think of guys like Isaiah McKenzie in Buffalo. He's a gadget guy. So, on a DFS standpoint, if you pick the right week, it could be a guy for low money to give you that opportunity. Rich says Kirk is definitely a sleeper pick for me. I agree, Rich, 100%. Christian Kirk to me, I think he's going to get overlooked specifically because of the AJ Green factor. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at the AJ Green factor, and they're going to look completely over the fact that Christian Kirk is still there. Okay, I do. I think they're going to completely be misguided, and they're going to look at they're going to be looking at other players in that realm. Okay, and we could go, and this is what I like about this. And again, these are preseason rankings, not mine. Okay, they're not mine. Okay, but what I do is I kind of take a bunch of different sites and kind of gauge them and see where these guys are going. And right now, you got Christian Kirk, okay, right now going around anywhere between like 50 and 60, okay? Anywhere between about 50 and 60, okay? But if you look at guys that have been drafted in his range, okay, you're talking guys like Henry Ruggs, Russell Gage, Emmanuel Sanders, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman Jr., John Brown, Traquan Smith, Darius. I think I would take Christian Kirk out of any of those guys. Okay, I look above at guys that are being drafted above him as well. Guys like Nelson Aguilar, who's in New England this year, Brashard Perryman in Detroit, Laviska Shenault. Now, I like Laviska Shenault. I would draft him ahead of Christian Kirk, but the other guys, I would go in on Christian Kirk, man. Listen. You always have to look around who these guys are drafted above and beyond, right? And that's how you got to formulate your own decision. Now, that brings me to a good point, and I want to ask the question about mock drafts, and I want to ask the question because I think what happens is mock drafts are tremendous when it comes to trying to evaluate what your tier process is going to be and where you formulate your ADPs. But I think sometimes it can be information overload and kind of can skew your judgment. And the reason why I say that is you could be going into these mock drafts. First thing to do before you do a mock draft, this is what I want you to do. This is 101. Okay, we're going to end the show on this. So this is what I want to do. Fantasy 101. When you're going in your mock drafts, please go into your mock drafts with your own rankings first. Okay, go in with your own rankings first. Do not allow the mock draft do not allow the mock draft to formulate your own ADP status. What you want to do is you want to be your own expert. Okay, you want to be your own analyst. You want to get your tier system in place, and then you want to compare it to what these other ADPs are and see what the consensus are. Because then you want to test your own knowledge too. You don't want to just grab other people's picks and put them out there. What you want to do is you want to take your knowledge and put them up against the best. That's what you want to do. That's how you get better. That's how you get better in formulating your own ADPs, in your own rankings. So you know that was my pick. And then it makes you say, hey, listen, I have these guys in the same kind of realm, right? I have these guys in the same kind of tier, the same kind of structure. But don't allow all those picks to convolute your line of thought. If you think very strongly about something, if you think very deeply about something, go all in because, listen, at the end of the day, this is your team. This is your team, right? Go in on your own guys, Rich says. Absolutely. Always formulate your own opinion. I can't agree even more. I can tell you right now, I remember, listen, I always was the guy that you get the, whoa. When I drafted, I was, whoa. I was like, where did that come from? Okay. I go back and I can't remember what year, but I took Matt Forte as my number one overall pick. Number one overall, and I said I was nuts. I said I was nuts. You're crazy. You're crazy. He's good, but no way he's a number one overall pick. Here's what I did. Before that draft, I lined up and I looked at a PPR standpoint, and I said, Matt Forte is a PPR monster. How many catches does he get? How many targets does he get? Okay, at that year, the Chicago Bears, they changed their offensive coordinator. I think it might have been the guy that came from the AFL or the Tressel or Tressman, Mark Tressman, okay, who was a guy who I knew was crazy when it came to running backs. He wanted to throw the ball all over the place, which guess what? That formulated my own opinion of Matt Forte, who I already liked. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take him above the next guy. Okay? And that's what I did. And you know what? It worked out. It worked out. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work out every year, but it was my opinion. Okay, if I would have went to, a CBS Sports Line or an ESPN, I would have looked at their mock drafts, I would have been like, I can't take Forte number one, right? So you got to judge your own. Like Rich says, I always get one sleeper pick that everyone goes, exactly. You always get, but Rich, I go deep, man. I go deep. And like this year, I'm telling you right now, my number one receiver will be Calvin Ridley over DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, Calvin Ridley is my number one receiver. And already I'm getting a lot of heat. No Devonta Adams, okay? No DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill. I love those guys, 100%. Devonta Adams to me is still the most consistent week-to-week performer. But I look at what Calvin Ridley did without Julio Jones. I look at guys that aren't going to be able to step up to fill that role. I look at a guy like Kyle Pitts, who's going to command attention across the seams to give that wheel route wide open. I look at a guy like Mike Davis, okay, who's a guy that, number one, they haven't had in a long time. Okay, they had Devonta Freeman. You see what happened with that offense with Devonta Freeman was able to catch the ball and run the rock, right? That's the kind of offense they're going to have with Mike Davis. They didn't have that with Todd Gurley. Okay, they tried to mix in guys like Ito Smith and Brian Hill. It never worked. They have the guy this year, Mike Davis. That's going to command more attention. Calvin Ridley is going to exceed expectations. He's going to exceed expectations. I'll tell you that right now. So for me, that's why that's mine. That's all me. Okay, I don't think you're going to find a lot of people ever that are going to say Calvin Ridley is their number one receiver. Now, Rich says, my first one ever was Antonio Gates, last pick of my draft, had an incredible rookie season sometime. Listen, but that's the thing, Rich. It's your pick, the end of drafts. It's a sleeper. It doesn't hurt you whatsoever. It can only help you. And I think that's what's great. So I just want to say that because I think a lot of people rely on the experts. And I think for me, I always looked at the experts as not reassurance, but where I rank. Right? Where I didn't change my picks based on the experts, but I want to see if I was along the same logic. I'm by saying this. This was the first year that I dove hardcore into DFS Major League Baseball. The first year. I'm going to be honest with you. I was always a season-long guy, right? I was always a season-long guy. But I dove into the analytics of it. I studied it up. I wanted to see how it was formulated. I got my own opinion. I was always against the experts, right? I was always against them. Okay, in the beginning. And I was wrong. I was dead wrong, right? DFS is a completely different animal. And then, I was able to start formulating my own analytics. And then when I would go in and be like, okay, I see this roster ownership is pretty high. I have a lot of people thinking the way that I do. So I'm on the same wavelength. Now, again, in DFS, you're trying to get your low ownership value guys to put you above because you're always going to have high ownership, right? But you also have to formulate your own basis of information. And I can't say that enough. Rich says, couldn't agree with Gridley more. I use experts. Exactly. Right. Exactly. You use experts as a guide, not the end all be all, because the experts ain't always right either. At the end of the day, you're always going to formulate your own opinion, stand strong with it, make it consistent. At the end of the day, I'll tell you what, it feels goddamn good when one of your guys hit that you picked and nobody else, man. So, yeah, Rich, Calvin Ridley, 100%. He is the guy that I'm looking at this year to really be that number one offensive firepower on your fantasy football lineup. Now, as always, man, great show. I love this is great football talk. I get the Jones. I get the feeling. I get all the juices flowing with this. I absolutely love it. We're midway through our breakdown session. Last week, I enjoyed it with the Baltimore Ravens. This week, it was the Arizona Cardinals. I think next week, we're going to break down the Colts. Now, I will be doing more of these as well. As you know, just so everybody knows what's going on, where you can find me, Fantasy Firebox is always going to be Saturday and Sundays at 9 and 9:30 a.m., depending on when my ass gets up. Okay, exclusively for Win Daily Sports. Go check them out at Win Daily Sports on all social avenues. Follow the YouTube page, subscribe if you want to get all the great content that we do. You can catch me. Again, it's going to be a pop-up show. If you want to go follow at the Sharp app, another new venture that I'm involved in as well. We do a show, me, Mark Drumheller, and Nikki Ghost for DFS from the Win Daily team. We do a plus money action show. We just talk about sports betting when it's just from a plus money prop standpoint. It's been tremendous, great. We had our inaugural show, or our debut show, I should say, last week. It went really well. We'll have another one this week, and we're just going to pop up every now and then. You never know when there's a good game, some good props. We're going to pop up and see what we can get. And then we're going to have some other stuff during the week as well. Again, Heat Ratio Sports still alive and well. Everybody doing well. Brought the Heat Ratio live show back last week. I needed a break to formulate some things out. So some great guests coming up. And then again, I'm sure we'll be doing some more fantasy work as well for Fox Sports The Gambler. You can see me at Fox PHL Gambler every single day. You hear me on the radio at 3:50. We go a little extra long on Tuesdays with the Final Judgment. Again, 1700 The Champ. You follow me at 1700 The Champ every Tuesday, 6 o'clock. On the radio out there, 1700 a.m. In Des Moines, Iowa. Giving the Iowites some little Philly flavor out there as well. So a lot of cool stuff, man. Hey, just follow me at TCutillo23 and you'll see it all. Rich, as always, thanks for checking in, buddy. Ain't talked in a while. Glad to see you out there. My man Mike checking in as well. It's a Sunday morning. I know not everybody's up. This is what I love. I appreciate it. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next weekend.